Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Bill Davis, let's dive into the first question.
Absolutely. Our first one comes from Dave in Minneapolis, and Dave wonders, we have a corporate AV team that's doing more and more live broadcasts and many concurrent events. Without being able to add staff, we developed in-house staff. What suggestions do you have for formal/semi-formal training on show calling specifically?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I'm not sure what on the show calling, maybe if you're directing, meaning show calling. I think the tried and true method of doing this, if you can spare that in-house staff for the duration of one or two of these shows, is have them shadow the person who is calling your show, sit beside them in the room and watch them call or run the show, if that's what the person is that you need. And once they watch two or three shows, have them take the reins while the other person is sitting beside them to point out any problems that they may have. And it shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 of these live shows to apprentice in that manner, to develop enough skills to be able to handle that particular duty in your AV show. And then they can go off on their own and handle a straight one. That's how I was brought up in the industry in radio and television. So I TD'd many shows, but sat behind the TD in several live shows to watch exactly what they did and exactly listen to the nomenclature and the calls and how the director was shouting out things to know what they were asking for. And it doesn't take long to pick that stuff up if you're sitting there next to the person who's doing it.
Mickey?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, there's nothing like apprenticing or shadowing a highly skilled, highly experienced technician or artist or craftsperson. I probably wouldn't agree that it would just take 2 or 3 shows. Like in my experience, like depending on the complexity of the broadcast or of the show, it could take years to build up that level of skill. Of course, like simpler broadcasts might not take as long to train a person to be at that level, but certainly have someone learn from someone who knows what they're doing already.
Bill?
And if you want a master class on it, go on the web and search for Super Bowl Call and Hamish Hamilton. He's the director of the show. He has a video of Haley Collette, his AD, calling the Super Bowl, and the complexity. You get to watch what's happening on screen, and you get to see how the call goes to drive what's happening on that massive show with a massive audience. It is a textbook case. Everything she says is precise, on time, on tempo, because she's working with music in the halftime shows and the rest of that. It's just brilliant to watch. So I highly recommend everybody take a listen to what Haley did for Hamish on the Super Bowl.
And the thread through all of these answers is that there is no video you can watch. There is no book you can read. You've got to do it. You've got to get next to somebody who's a master, pick up on all of the little things that they're doing, pay close attention, and then just cut your teeth and do it. And try on something small, volunteer somewhere where if you fail, it's not going to be catastrophic and nobody's going to lose a job over it, but you got to do it. Next question.
Next question comes from Eric Price in Kansas City in the U.S. I am planning on shipping a kit to a remote guest that includes a Shure MVX2U XLR-to-USB Interface. What do I need to know about setting it up with the Motiv app so that my guest can just plug and play?
Good, Mickey?
So yeah, for something like this, first off, you'd want to, depending on what microphone your guest will be using or whatever microphone you'll be sending out with the kit, make sure you have phantom power set appropriately. If you're sending out the condenser, set phantom power on. If it's a dynamic, then of course turn it off. You may also want to rough in the gain. Again, using a similar microphone or the same microphone that they'll be using. Set the gain conservatively so that in case they end up being someone who likes to project or they may like be very dynamic in terms of the way they speak or their performance. Hi, Chris. You may want to set it a little more conservatively. That's what I would go for. Do know though that some OSs and also some applications may automatically adjust that microphone volume until you get to set it to a manual setting. So just know that on the day you may have to reconfigure that gain setting using the software. Another thing is with MVX2U, you can enable a compressor and also a limiter. If you're doing a fully produced show where you have someone on a board writing faders, I don't think you'd want to enable compression on the contributor end. You may want to have that all that control of dynamic range on your mixing console instead. There may be an argument regarding turning on the limiter, but that's up to your A1 to decide on. Another thing is, the last thing would be EQ. For me, I'd probably set a high pass filter at maybe 60 hertz or 80 hertz, like assuming most likely this would be not a studio space and it would be an uncontrolled environment. I'd probably set the high pass filter at 60 hertz just so that you can get rid of that rumble and don't have to deal with it down the line.
I remember when the MVX2U first came out, I was so excited because I had someone that I wanted to have in a meeting and they had a nice mic and they said, yeah, but I don't have any sort of interface. And I was like, oh man, I've got just the thing for you. And then I fired up the app and I went in here and I got all the settings just right. I thought I had the headphone mix perfect and the gain. I didn't have anything on the EQ. I went in here, tweaked all my settings, and then didn't they plug it into Teams? And as soon as Teams got a hold of that thing, it turned auto gain back on and went all over the place. I don't know if it respects this, but a best practice might be that after you've got your settings just right, hit the little lock to make a device lock, and that might protect the settings a little bit more from some pesky applications. It's not foolproof. Some people are still going to try to get in, but safety first. Next question. I'm sorry, Mickey, you had one more thing?
Yeah, just going to say that, it's not only Teams. Zoom by default has automatically adjust microphone volume enabled. So it's a lot of different applications automatically adjust the volume, including macOS's built-in core audio does that by default.
That's fair.
And another thing, like if you hit that lock icon, they would need the Motiv Mix software to unlock it. So if you need to adjust that volume later down the line, you would be stuck with having to have the talent install it on their machine if you're not sending a computer along to them as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just send the computer. You're good. Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth is up next, and Harold wonders, the Sony FX3 has FTP file transfer protocol capabilities, and I'd like to use it during a photo shoot. Does it only work with Sony's Image Edge software, or can I also use FileZilla? Additionally, is Windows a better operating system for Sony products?
Mickey?
Yeah, the FTP functionality on the FX line of cameras is the camera. It sets the camera so that it acts as an FTP client, not an FTP server. So you cannot log in, like say using FileZilla to log into the camera. It's the other way around. You have the camera log into an FTP server that resides in your network or somewhere on the internet. Regarding Windows or another OS for Sony products, it's all the same.
Your questions and votes do drive the show, so don't forget you can use Makana to chat, ask questions, and vote on the questions. If you don't have access, just sign up at officehours.global/join. You'll get an email then with links on how to get into Makana, how to join the Discord, all the good stuff. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. To use boundary mics in a permanent installation, where would mics be placed for good audio? This is a basketball arena with folding bleachers that's used for many different activities. So mics on the floor, out.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, that's a tough ask. It depends on what sound you're trying to capture. You're trying to capture just the sound of the crowd, the sound of the squeaky shoes on the court, or the sound of the basketball whooshing through the net. It depends on where you're going to put that microphone and get it close to whatever you need. A boundary microphone does need a flat reflective surface to mount on. Many of them have their own flat reflective surface built into them, so that you can kind of hang them anywhere if they have a flat surface. Then the mic element is facing that little flat surface. So you could hang them overhead. You don't want to put them on the floor anyway in a permanent installation, because anytime the floor gets polished or cleaned, you don't want to get any kind of cleaning materials into the boundary microphones, or where they can be stepped on the floor or bumped against, or trampled by foot traffic. So you want it hanging so that it's not affected by vibrations from foot traffic or crowds. I would hang them from the ceiling or maybe the back of the backboard. I'm not sure exactly what sounds you're going for.
Marty?
Yeah, Courtney's exactly right. Depending on what your budget is for microphone replacements and how frequently you want to be replacing microphones, permanently installing mics in a multi-use arena is next to impossible, because especially with retracting bleachers. In a hockey arena, you have the side walls that you can attach to the top of the plexiglass, because that generally doesn't move. You can get small boundary microphones and attach them to the backboards on the hoops, when the hoops are retracted up into the ceiling for other uses, the microphones would go with them, so dress your wires appropriately. But in most cases, I got to say, the wiring might be in place, but the microphones are taken out after every event and put in just before the events. And that way they're not vulnerable.
Mickey?
Yeah, I'd say, like, if you really do need to permanently install microphones, I think boundary mics might not be the best solution or the best type of microphone to use for this. I'd probably think of a couple long shotguns, maybe Sennheiser 8070, if you can find it, the older MKH70, or possibly even the 816. A pair of them on the back walls, in either an AB pattern or an XY pattern. Might be what I would go for, as opposed to boundary microphones. Boundary microphones rely on the vibration of the surface that they're mounted to capture the signal. So you really need to be quite close to the source of the noise. Saying that, like, going back to the shotgun microphones on the back wall, you would probably capture more crowd noise on that rather than the actual effects of the ball going across the court, and also the shoe squeaks. You would still want to have microphones up close to the actual field of play, so that you can capture a nice full sounding, detailed effects mix. You can maybe mount the boundary microphones on the backboard of the ring, so that you can get some of those effects. Although most of the time they use lavaliers are used there to get the noise of the ring and also the basket. But going back to, like, the overall image or of your effects mix, you'd still want to get something closer to the field of play.
Marty?
So I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest something totally different. The microphone arrays that we use in conference rooms that can be mounted above and that have DSP built into them, so that you can control. They automatically sense the direction of sound and focus the microphones in that direction. And you can limit the direction from where they pick up. So if you were to hang a microphone over the field of play, and it wants to be within, I think, 16 feet of the floor, which is reasonable, you can exclude the entire audience area around the arena and just focus the microphone down on the floor. And then wherever the team is playing back and forth, that microphone will follow the team. So these are microphone arrays, and I think you can possibly get some really good sound out of that from a single microphone mounted overhead that will simply follow the players as they go back and forth. It is worth a try. You can find a qualified Sennheiser dealer, for example, or a Shure dealer. Like I've used the TCC2 from Sennheiser. That has a lot of capabilities and a lot of tuning in software that it's capable of. And you can get a demo from your local representative and just try it, see if it works.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. To add to that, I'd be curious if it works. Though I do know the algorithms on those beamforming microphone array systems are really programmed and tuned for capture of speech as opposed to an effects mix for a sporting event. But I'd be curious to know, companies like Lawo and Calrec have functionality built into their consoles, like specifically for it started with football, soccer games, wherein they have an array of microphones and they track where the ball is, and that array of microphones are automatically faded up and down to give you an appropriate effects mix or get you a little closer there before you can actually push the fader up or down. That might be something to look into, like solutions from, if budget permits, solutions from Calrec and Lawo that can accommodate that.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City is interested in this. Is it possible to expand the Stream Deck surface across two devices, an XL and a Plus, using the rotary knobs to navigate pages?
Courtney?
You could probably set that up with Companion to have one Stream Deck can send commands to the other Stream Deck to change pages as you rotate the knob. So have it send commands. You have to just determine which one is going to be the master to control the other, I think. Or maybe you could set it up for both. That might get confusing. But so that you have when you turn the knob, go next page, next page, next page, and it sends those commands to both devices. So you can basically do it yourself. I don't know if they have a mode built in where it can expand the contents. You can do a layout and save it across the expanse of two of them in a single command, but you could set them up with parallel pages and have them automatically switch pages and stay in sync with each other by rotating a knob, I think.
What I've always had to do, like I've got a Stream Deck Zilla here with three of them set up, and I've always had to say, this is, the top, this is the middle, this is the bottom, and have three different pages in the Stream Deck app that's built into the Mac. Although I do use a Plus at my other office, and what I tend to do with that is instead of having the knobs be what turns the pages, I actually find that or maybe I haven't figured out how to do that. What I found that I've had to do is, instead of taking one of those, I think there's only 6 buttons on the Stream Deck Plus, and dedicating it to be a page turn, you can actually, on that little screen that's right above the knobs, you can swipe left and right on that in order to make it do the page change. So maybe that'll help save you a button in there. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Why is Meyer Sound considered a standard in PA audio? What can we all learn from them?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Meyer is it's probably one of the standards because it's incredibly good. It's really, really a very high quality product. I would say there's, in my eyes, in like pro audio, if you're talking like PAs, you've got Meyer, you have D&B, and you have L Acoustics. And in any like real setting, no one's really speaking about anything other than those, and really it's mainly now at the highest echelon, it seems to really just be L Acoustics, honestly. I've been mixing on D&B for the last like 15 years, and it's just absolutely incredible. So yeah, I would say I'm not a real technical person as far as engineering of equipment. It's not a thing that I do. So I can tell you that Meyer has a very unique build approach in how they make their speakers, which really affects just the phase linearity of their sound. I would say definitely check their stuff out, and they can explain it to you a lot better than I can. So,
Marty?
And I would probably add Danley to one of those top brand manufacturers. They all put in an incredible amount of engineering into their products, into their entire range of products. But I would also encourage you to go and look for the yesterday's Office Hours special show, where I introduce another brand and a different technology for loudspeakers.
Next question.
Ryan Newell in Kigali, Rwanda says, I'm living where sound treatment materials for a room are mostly do-it-yourself, as importing proper and or specialized equipment is cost prohibitive. Any tips for easy or cheap ways to deaden a room? For example, paper, 2.5 dozen egg flats, blankets, MDF baffling, diffusion, and so forth.
Chris?
All right. Do not put paper around your room. Like 1,000%, that is, you're coating your room in a fire hazard. So do not do that, no matter what. No egg cartons, nothing like that. If you look behind me, all the panels that I have, if you see my ceiling, this all has flame retardant built into it. This is really important. Your kids, your brother, your sister, your mom, whoever is probably living in the place where your studio is, do not mess with fire hazard. I would say it's incredibly easy to do thoughtful acoustic treatment. Acoustic treatment really just gets expensive when it gets really aesthetically nice. So packing blankets, things like this, anything that is going to really stop acoustic sound waves, the thicker the thing is. Curtains, you want to deaden reflective surfaces. If your walls have 30 coats of paint on them, they're really dense and really reflective. Okay, so that's like a real thing. In that kind of a situation, you just want the most amount of coverage as possible, because there's probably nothing useful in the room. So I would kind of look at things a little bit like that. Definitely, if you can get packing blankets with grommets, with metal hole punches in them, you can easily just hang hooks on the walls. Really be mindful of your electrical outlets. Do not let blankets hang over where things are going to be plugged in. Be really thoughtful about that stuff. And it's really, really easy. I would say parallels are going to be the big issue. Really pay attention to your ceiling. People don't understand your ceiling is probably one of the biggest issues in your actual room, particularly your corners. The way that sound works, especially in small contained spaces, is it will travel into a corner, and then they get forced here and they couple. And this is what bass traps do, essentially. If you put bass traps in your corners, then this acoustic energy that builds up gets trapped behind these panels and does not come back out into the room. It gets eaten up, and then you can actually hear what your speakers are doing. Your microphones are capturing what the source is. The real thing that you're doing in acoustic treatment is when you're in a bad acoustic environment, you're hearing a sound come from everywhere, because it's right? You're in a fishbowl. It's just moving around you. When you kill all that stuff, you start hearing sound sources directly from where they are originating from. And that reflects to your speakers. Now you're hearing speakers right as the speakers, and not from behind you, the sides, above you, from the floor, whatever. This is where it gets really, really messed up. So remember, if you're having a super tough time, put on headphones. You're not listening to your room at all. This is a usable thing, and it's a learnable skill for sure. And you want to take the most information that you can and just, do the best thing you can. But every room has issues. It's a thing. It's about physics and science. It exists. So,
Bill?
I'll talk about MDF because you specifically asked about it. That's medium density fiberboard, and it's a composite product that's wood chips and basically a binder material. The thing about it is that it's very heavy and very massive compared to things like plywood. And because of that, it can be a really effective sound barrier. I took a post and tin hay barn on my old property and clad the entire thing in heavy-duty MDF. It was a bare to work with. We had to have a crew of 6 to put the panels on the ceiling. But if you do that and don't pierce the barrier for things like electrical and stuff like that, it forms a pretty effective sound block as long as there's no places for the sound to get through. It is a pain in the tail to work with, but it can be very effective. But that's what MDF is. It's not really baffling or diffusion. It's really a block, particularly for medium-low frequencies. I mean, nothing does real low end except mass, but it was pretty effective for that. The other thing I'll mention here is you talk about drapery and things like that, and over my shoulder, or right over there, you'll see that blue highlight is on drapery, and I have double fullness, double drapes. It's very effective at keeping reflections off of that corner, and so it's inexpensive. I have it on track so that I can pull it in and out as needed because I've got whiteboard behind there when we have conferences. But I have it in that corner and I have it in the other corner as opposed to corner traps because I think it looks nicer and it's pretty cheap. And you can find heavy-duty drapes pretty much everywhere in the world. They're pretty inexpensive. And in some cases, I have 2 or 3 layers there just to make sure it's absorbent enough.
Mickey?
Yeah, I would go with DIY acoustic absorption panels. Build them out of plywood. The ones I have all around me, including in my ceiling. I've had these panels. I think this is the 3rd studio that I've moved them to. They're made out of plywood, and then I have them shaped so that they are irregular. None of them are like this exact same width on each side. I think the shortest, the thinnest corner of my panels are 10 centimeters, and the thickest corner is, I think, 40 centimeters, over 1 foot. And that allows them to sit on the walls so that no single 2 sides are parallel to each other, so that the remaining reflection that does bounce off doesn't just ping pong back and forth, giving you a standing wave. They're really inexpensive to build. I've filled mine with, I think, fiberglass insulation. Yeah, fiberglass insulation. You can also use mineral wool or rock wool insulation to fill it up. The more mass, the heavier they are, the lower the frequencies they can control. Also, lifting them up off the walls gives you an additional increase in decrease in the frequency that you can control, because some of that energy gets trapped between the panel itself and the wall.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Okay, here's a DIY project I've come up with. I have not tried this, but I've thought it through fairly carefully. These are fairly easy to get at any discount store or home improvement store. These sculpted memory foam mattress toppers. Here's one for about $89 for a king size. They're pretty large. They have this sculpted foam, and I tell you, the memory foam is a very dense foam. Excuse me, and it will absorb sound really well. And because it's a mattress topping, it has to pass certain fireproof approvals, so it doesn't give off hopefully toxic fumes if it catches on fire, or it doesn't continue to burn. It's self-extinguishing. So check before you buy one, check the fireproof specifications of this particular type of memory foam. And so what you could do, because it rolls up fairly easily, is you could take you a 1x2 strip of wood, the width of that mattress cover, and get some industrial adhesive and a staple gun, and attach that 1x2 strip of wood to one side, and staple it and glue it, and then put a couple of holes in it. And then you could put some hooks in your ceiling that are anchor hooks, so that you could hang this thing on one in front of each of the walls that are parallel. One of the walls that's parallel, at least between 2 parallel walls, like Mickey said, so it'll kill the standing wave. And then if you're not using it, you can return your room to normal by just unhooking it, take it down and roll it up, and it becomes a giant big cigar that sits back in the back of your closet somewhere. So that might be a good way. The only thing, they do come in, a lot of them are this blue memory foam, but they do make some that are white. So you could get them in white or blue. And and they do roll up. Let's see, I was trying to find a picture of one rolled up, but they do roll up pretty well to store out of the way. Let's see, here's a picture. Looks like this when you roll it up. So that might be a way to get you a non-flat foam type reflecting surface, because if you buy Sonofoam or the foam that's designed to do this, to sound sorb, it's heinously expensive. It's about 10 times more expensive than a mattress pad top.
And Marty?
So let me start out by saying that the most effective and least expensive opportunity to do sound treatment is when the room is being built. If the room is being built properly, then you will have a very easy time finishing it off with interior acoustic treatment. That said, there are two different kinds of acoustic treatment. There's interior treatment, where you are applying one of three types of sound conditioning in the room, which being absorption, reflection, and diffusion. And I'll talk about those in a moment. The other type of sound treatment is sound transmission, which is sound that is traveling through a wall, so in either direction. So if you have in a place where you have a lot of noise outside on the street, you want to do a really good job in minimizing or damping or absorbing or preventing sound transmissions through the wall. So the interior treatment, think about how frequencies are wavelengths. And high frequencies have very short wavelengths. Low frequencies have long wavelengths. And also think about reflections off of the room walls and the ceilings, sort of like billiard table, a pool table bouncing off of the edges. Or imagine your room surfaces are mirrors and you've got a flashlight. And that beam of light is starting at the location of your speakers and then bouncing off all the walls. So absorption will absorb sound, and really thin absorption panels will only be effective at very high frequencies because of the short wavelengths. At lower frequencies, you need thicker, more massive meaning heavy and dense, products to absorb lower frequencies. Diffusion is very handy because what diffusion does is where a reflection acts like a billiard ball off of the edge of a pool table, absorption scatters the sound as it's reflecting. So, spreads it all out and decoralizes it, keeps the energy in the room, but you don't hear reflections like an echo. So absorption, reflection, and diffusion are the three types of treatments that can be put into a room. There's a lot that goes into it, and you can find a lot of information about this on a number of websites, manufacturers who produce these sound treatment products. It actually explain a lot of the technology and the engineering that goes into them. So take a look before you do anything, educate yourself, and you'll find it very valuable.
You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. It's quick and easy. There's nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just go to askofficehours.global, throw in your name, throw in your question. We'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
Harshid Trivedi at Daytona Beach, Florida, here on the panel often, says, describe, please, the AB patterns and I believe XY patterns. Says XXY, but I think that's XY mic patterns.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, so AB and XY are two of the numerous stereo microphone techniques. When you say AB, this is typically two microphones that are positioned in as a spaced pair. These are typically Omni microphones. These aren't Omni, But a lot of people also use cardioid microphones for this, and AB tends to give you a more natural sound that has quite a bit of like a crosstalk between your left and right channels. So it makes it sound like a bit more open, less it's less you get less of a distinct sound between the left and the right. Um, so the AB pattern is typically used for like orchestral recordings, wherein the AB microphone pair will be used as a quite a prominent source in your mix. XY patterns, on the other hand, is a pair of microphones that are usually set at 90 degrees to each other, where the capsules are coincident in the plane that you are capturing. So if in the horizontal plane, it only matters that they are coincident at that plane. It doesn't matter that one mic is higher than each other and than the other, and the other mic is lower than the other. And this gives you a bit wider of a stereo image, and you can also adjust the width of the stereo image by simply increasing the angle between them, or on the other hand, you can also make it narrower by decreasing the angle between the two.
Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, that was great, Mickey. Thank you so much for the illustration, the demonstration. If you are asking about stereo microphone techniques, also consider that when you combine those two channels in mono, as some listeners will do depending on the device they're listening to, mono compatibility is a really big issue and a really big question when spacing microphones out. So when you have spaced microphones, the microphones are detecting two different, in combination, two different aspects of the sound. Intensity, which is the volume of the sound arriving at each microphone, but also the timing relationship of when one sound reaches both microphones. So when you have a spaced array like that, and you have an instrument or a spoken voice that is not directly in between them, but off center a little bit, the sound from that person or instrument will reach one microphone quicker than it will reach the other microphone. And that introduces a timing difference and a phase offset. And when you combine them to mono, you could be experiencing some comb filtering. And so that's something to pay attention to. One of the benefits of an XY pattern, as Mickey was demonstrating, is that regardless of where the sound source is, go ahead, Mickey, show that. And let's take his video. Regardless of where the sound source is coming from, it is reaching both microphones at the same time. And so it is always mono compatible. The downside of that is that the intensity is going to be the same at both microphones as well. So intensity and timing differences are the two aspects of stereo pickup, and paying attention to mono compatibility is important.
Next question.
Matthew LeCount in Oakland says, using macros on my ATEM Constellation, can I switch ME1 and ME2 to the same source at the same time and another to switch them to different sources?
Mickey?
Yeah, you can certainly use macros for this, though because macros assume that your switcher is at a specific state, and all it changes are whatever controls you record within the macro. There might be a chance that you may not end up with the cut or the result that you're expecting. For something like this, I would prefer to use a separate control layer, something like Central Control, or even like a streamdeck or companion, to combine multiple commands into a single button, as opposed to relying on macros that may or may not work depending on how your switcher is configured at the time of executing the macro.
Hey, we've got more evening shows than ever, it seems like. If you're not getting up with us in the morning, you can join us in the evening. We've got extra hours on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific and the rundown on Thursdays at 6 Pacific. That's tomorrow. And now, every now and again, you'll see us come in on a Tuesday at 6 Pacific with some office hours specials. So be on the lookout for that on the YouTube page and in Makana. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. And Douglas wonders, in this article about FireAid, they mentioned simultaneously streaming to 28 platforms. How would you coordinate that for a production at that level? Is there a sort of pro version of Restream or Restream-like service?
Mickey?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with FireAid and at what level of production they do. But in larger productions, you would typically have either an encoder per set of platforms, so that all the destinations that require the same settings for encode rely on a single encoder. And then, like, say, if you have another destination that requires a different format or a different bit rate or bit depth or codec, for example, it would rely on separate encoders and a separate encoder for those other destinations. And then you have a set of encoding engineers that manage the pipeline of those encodes going out to typically a service like AWS Media Live that then rebroadcasts those streams to the appropriate destinations. In situations wherein there isn't maybe it's a smaller production that just has a lot of endpoints to go to, people do use Restream, but also we've worked in situations wherein they just set the destinations to go live automatically as soon as it receives a transmission, and they just manage the start of the broadcast at the encode stage. Actually, I don't know if I could speak about it, but there are some productions that do it that way, wherein they don't have enough manpower to manage to have an encode engineering team under the EIC.
Bill?
I'm just saying, I just wanted to comment. The 5 years we've spent in office hours has been a real education for me in this world of internet distribution of creative content, digital signals and things like that. It has changed so rapidly, even since our first show here on Office Hours, and it's continuing to, and it's one of the more fun continuing education things I've been through. I just see this changing so fast because I'm watching eyeballs migrate in masses away from the old broadcast system and into this new internet delivery of content system. And I'm privileged to be able to get invited to and be able to watch some of the meetings that have to do with people trying to navigate and create services, new services, manage the ones that exist, discuss whether this one is better than that one. And it's such a moving target that's fascinating to me. Whatever we say about how it's done today for an event like you're talking about FireAid, I think that was for the fires in Los Angeles. Whatever is happening today, I'm expecting 6 months from now and a year from now and certainly 5 years from now, a lot of that to change because it is such a rapidly developing thing as we kind of watch content distribution just change across the face of the entire world. It's a very exciting time to be in this business for those of you who are doing it, and keep learning, continuing education, keep finding places to learn more about this stuff because it is the future. At least that's what it feels like to me.
Next question.
Next question comes from Ryan Thompson in Houston, Texas. I'm going to be off work for about 8 weeks and need some good reading about audio engineering. Any good books or sites from the audio gurus here?
Courtney.
Well, since you said you have 8 weeks to read a book, I might suggest now it's fairly old. Audio Cyclopedia. Audio hasn't changed very much since people learned to speak. This came out in 1969. I have Audio Cyclopedia. It's quite thick. You can see there's the top view of it. However, it is a little dated because, it was written at a time when audio processing was all done via transistors and even tubes in some situations. So take that into mind. There's a more recent book called Handbook for Sound Engineers that is supposedly the new audio cyclopedia, but it was published in 1987, so it's a little bit dated, doesn't really cover surface mount electronics, things like that. But it gives you, both of those give you a good, giant overview of acoustics and audio and the characteristics of analog audio, and even a lot of circuitry on how processing is done old school wise in the analog days. If you want a good review site, I'd say Curtis Judd is a great YouTube site for reviews and analysis of audio equipment. That's a good place to start. He does fair, honest reviews of stuff on YouTube. They're very well produced and a lot of detail, a lot of close-ups and instructions on how to use audio equipment that is used in production these days. So that's a couple of good starts for you to keep you busy. Curtis Judd for the state-of-the-art equipment that's been coming out for reviews, and Audio Cyclopedia or Handbook for Sound Engineers is good reading material to have on your shelf if you have a sturdy shelf, because they're both very thick.
You take those first two books, and if you do 100 pages a day over 8 weeks, you might even be able to take the weekends off. Go ahead, Chris.
If we want to look at old, I mean, very much like what Courtney just said is I mean, like the physics of audio, it does not change very much. Now I'll say audio and technology in audio, I feel like it advances a decade every year. It's like, I mean, it is just at lightning speed, constantly changing, and option and opportunity within the audio formats are like, I mean, they're just constantly evolving. So that's a really exciting thing. I would say the big reads, the PA Bible, and the Yamaha Handbook, those are definitely like solid, very, very still correct because science and physics are science and physics. We're not like guessing about this stuff. It's a real thing. So those, if you want to read long, boring literature, there you go. I would say one of the most inspiring things for me has been like Pure Mix and Mix with the Masters. I don't know what context you're talking about learning about audio because it's so vastly different. I don't work in corporate audio at all. Most of the stuff that all the other panelists are talking about on this show weekly, I've never even seen before, and I'm never going to use it. So because it's just not in my application. And that's what's amazing about this group is it's really, really all over the place and really diverse depending on what your needs are. For me, it's always just like music focused, and so I would say kind of those are the best resources for me. Pure Mix is incredible, and Mix with the I mean, you can see just like in the studio realm, this is like some of the greatest engineers in the world, and just how they work on your favorite songs, and them literally going through those mixes, and it's really, really informative. And you may find that there's things that, for me, in my experience, it was like, oh wow, I thought I was being like I was needed to stop here, and I'm watching this incredible mixer. They're doing 5 times that. Oh wow, that is safe to push. Let me experiment that. Or hey, wow, this person does the exact same thing I do. Okay, there was something about this that I heard that is usable. I'm going to trust myself a bit. That kind of stuff. So.
Mickey?
Yeah, so I think most of the books that I would recommend I've mentioned before, but this is the Sound Reinforcement Handbook from Yamaha that I think Chris mentioned earlier. Another one is a Sound System Design and Optimization from Bob McCarthy, who we've had here on the show before. If ever you're masochistic enough to want to learn about post-production sound, I would probably take a look at Practical Art of Motion Picture Sound from David Lewis Udall. It's one of the Bibles for post-production sound. Along with that is the guide to the invisible art of dialogue editing. It's like it's not a page turner. It's really boring, but you'll really learn what it takes to dialogue edit for the biggest motion pictures and TV shows in the world. If you want to rest your eyes in between reading, close your eyes and put on a podcast. Have a listen to Working Class Audio. And another one is 20,000 Hertz. I love 20,000 Hertz because it's a podcast that doesn't really talk about the technical, but it gets your mind flowing and thinking of sound in the world around you. So just a couple of things.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a few ways you can help. You can, of course, like and subscribe to the channel. But we also have volunteer opportunities, both during the show and around the show. So you can sign up for that at officehours.global/volunteer. And finally, a huge help is when folks decide they want to donate. Officehours.global/donate. We're a nonprofit, and we appreciate everything. It helps us keep the show going every day. Next question.
Roscoe Jones is up next from Madison, Indiana, and he says, first, use a good mic that complements the singer to get a good take. Second, ride the fader while watching the singer's body language to help you get a good recorded performance, and that's a quote. Do you agree? And how does body language affect the record quality?
Chris?
All right. So, yes. Okay. This is a little involved. So yes, understanding body language, and really understanding how a performer is moving, especially like in performance. And again, is this a live show? Is this a studio performance? What is the context of this? I will tell you, if you're asking this question, there's no way you're not going to ruin the performance. Do not try and do this on a thing that matters. This is the best practice in this is do live sound. That's the job in live sound. This is where you are massaging, coaxing, guiding, and just like collaboratively grouping things into an overall efficient output, right? And there's no better practice than that. I will tell you, imagine that we're not talking about sound, okay? We're photographers, and we're wildlife photographers, and we're going to go out and we're going to take pictures of wolves, okay? We go out, we find a majestic, awesome wolf, but it's slightly, okay, maybe we want to change a thing. Are we going to walk up to the wolf and start trying to, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to ruin everything, maybe get attacked by a wolf, I don't know. But the whole point here is that your involvement, okay, with a lack of information is not going to, what if that performer is doing something incredible and you don't understand it because you're not at the experience level to actually have developed how to see or interpret that? You know, the likeliness of you just like really just, our job is not to interfere with things, guys. And this is like one of the big things that I try and really push off to interns and everyone is that, like, we are collaborative guides, okay? Our job is to be silent and make sure things go smoothly, okay? If anyone knows we're there, there's a problem already. So it's already, like, I don't want to be noticed. The reason that production folks wear black is so you don't see them if they got to run on stage. And when you get into this even more, I mean, I've been doing live sound for, you know, the past 2 decades, like, all the time. And for me, if I have a performance and the singer's going crazy and all of a sudden throws a mic, I'm muting that microphone before it hits the ground. That is interactive mixing. And that's understanding, oh, he just hit that stand with a thing, it's fallen over. Okay, no, I'm on stage. No, I'm running out and I'm grabbing that mic stand before it falls off the stage and hits a crowd member in the face. That's interactive mixing. This is about being in touch with everything that's going on. And if you don't know how to be fully in control and be able to fully interpret the orbit of your environment and all that, then don't try and get involved because you're not going to make it better. I'm telling you, anytime I see a question come up in here that I don't know I don't try and answer it. I'm not gonna help, right? I'm gonna spread misinformation to you guys. That's not why I'm here. Right? And there's a panel of people who know those questions. So I stay in my lane, the thing that I know how to do. And that way, when I'm speaking, I know that I'm telling an outcome that I've had 100% success with. Right? And where there was failure and I kept going, it's now success. And I hold true to those values. So that's all I got.
Marty?
So Roscoe is asking specifically about recording. Now, there's 2 types of recordings. There's studio recordings, and there's recording live performances. And the signal chain is completely different. And so is the environment, and so is the social interaction. As Chris mentioned, you know, you can't direct art. Performance is art, and you can't direct it. You know, you can coach it, you can advise, but when a performer is up there, they're going to do what they're going to do because it's art. Performance is a full body experience for the performer. So, depending on the signal chain, depending on your environment, the most important thing for recording is gain staging. And the most important component in that is your preamp level. So a performer may have a very wide dynamic range where they will be virtually whispering in some parts and then screaming at another part. And, you want to avoid clipping and distortion when you get those loud parts, and you want to be able to capture the soft parts as well. So that's where gain staging and watching your levels comes in. I tell you, when I'm doing live sound, I've got my fingers on preamp levels a lot, right? Almost more than I do on faders, because I've got processing, I've got compression, I've got noise gating, I've got EQ in there, and all of those are affected by the preamp levels. And especially with live sound, when I don't have total isolation between microphones, noise gating is really, really important. Actually expanding, not necessarily noise gating, but expanding. Where, when the microphone is not actively being used, it automatically ducks the level down just a bit, just enough to get it out of the mix, so we're not picking up bleed from other sounds on the stage. So I'm always keeping an eye on my preamp levels. And also, now depending on your signal chain, in a recording studio, that console might be taking the channel output to the recorder rather than the preamp output, which you would have on a live signal chain. So that's completely different. Faders may be the more appropriate place to do that, but you want to have your preamp levels set so that they are completely out of the distortion range, but have enough gain at the quiet parts as well. So it's a little tricky, but it takes practice and it takes an understanding of both the performer and your signal chain. Sorry, I can't be more specific, but maybe Mickey can help. Actually, we're going to Bill Davis. Go ahead, call it.
Yeah, Bill, what do you got?
Yeah, well, so I got a couple of quick things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, but, in live performance, you've traditionally seen a rock star with a 58. They're singing part of it here, but when they belt, they move the mic away and they look up and they scream that big high note, and that all works. They're controlling their dynamics with mic position and stuff like that. As a narrator who does a lot of spoken word stuff, I'm doing the same kinds of things. I'm literally trying to get as physically into the performance as I can. So when something's happening very close, I'm moving in as close to my mic as possible as whistling. And when the line in the script says shouted, the detective shouted across the street to the coroner, I'm backing up and I'm shouting at the corners and stuff like that. So I am working the mic as a performer. And I don't want somebody else in that circumstance changing my volumes and things like that. I should be able to get that performance recorded if my chain is clean enough to be able to capture everything and not distort it. So it's both. You have to pay attention to what the performer wants to do, and that's Marty and other people have said that, but you also have to add your own art to it. And if something they're doing is causing a problem, it's your job as the engineer to fix it. So you got to be there present and you got to fix it.
Mickey?
Yeah, I'm taking this question from the point of view of cutting a track or cutting, recording a music track, because Roscoe mentions mentions get a good take. The earlier an element is in the chain coming in, the more important it is, and it starts from from the artist, from the performer. Tying this into their body language, you have to pay attention to your artist, your musician, or even if it's a voiceover talent. Pay attention to them. Are they having an off day? Maybe they're feeling kind of rough. Maybe today's not the day to record the track. You have to pay attention to them, and if I like as an engineer, it's not really my call to say that. I would typically talk to the producer that's working with us and say, and just ask them like, oh, do you think so and so might not be feeling great? Maybe their voice isn't at 100% today. Maybe today's not the day to record this. So that's the most important thing. Next is your recording environment. That's the second most important thing in the chain. A bad sounding room will result in a bad sounding recording. There are some situations where you need something to sound completely dead. There are other situations where you want a live sounding room. So having the appropriate environment to do the recording is also important. And then I also want to sidetrack. Like I worked under a supervisor before that worked with a lot of big names, including like Mariah Carey and all that, like huge musicians. And it was very important for him that the vibe of the studio, both the tracking room and also the control room, is set perfectly well. He would go out and like set depending on what track we're recording, set the lights in the studio to be appropriate for that type of song. He would, if it's if it's like a big ballad or whatever, he'd put out like scented candles, like the feel and the emotion of the artist at that point, the time that they're recording, is super important. And then after that comes in the technical side of things, the microphones, your channel strip, your preamp. If you're recording through EQ or recording through compression, and of course comes with that is gain staging. The technical stuff is nowhere near as important as your source of the sound, your artist, and also the environment that they're in.
Chris, put a bow on this one real quick for me.
Yeah, just very quickly. One, everything that Mickey was just talking about, like that's producing. That's what producing is. So already he's an engineer approaching the situation as a producer, looking at everything in a way, way wider scope, which is like, kudos to you. A couple just quick comments. I would just say one thing for me, and just since we were talking about just preamps and mic technique and all these things. One, when you're seeing people out like in live shows and they're doing all this, usually it's the worst thing ever. Usually they're not actually doing it correctly, and that's why all of a sudden stuff is just disappearing, right? Because also people they get tight response microphones and then try and play into them, and it's like, no, you should just stay on the mic, eat the mic, and let your engineer get a good consistent level where you're consistent, and then you're learning how to actually perform into a microphone. If you're all over the place, listen to me right now. Do I sound really good right now, or do I just that's what you're doing live. That's not good. Nobody wants that. So I would say look at that. And also as far as preamp levels and all those things, one, if you're doing live sound, do not be messing with preamps, because if you're doing monitors as well, you're changing all the volumes in the monitors. So now your band stuff is just changing. They don't know why. They have no idea why you're doing whatever. So be mindful. The only time I would be doing that is if I sound check and everything is solid good, then they're louder at showtime, because that happens with every band and every show. Then I will gain back down to where I was at safely at sound check, because that's the level they were hitting at sound check, and actually that was good for them before, and now I'm not clipping stuff. But I try, and especially I don't record with compressors. I record from a microphone, preamp, raw. That's it. And if there's a problem, I want to know about it right then. I'm talking to the singer right then. We're working on their microphone technique, because my whole goal is for them to be way more informed when they leave. So the next session I have with them is not tedious and tumultuous and arduous and awful, right? We don't want that. We want complete ease and efficiency, which is why the less gear you have, it's the less stuff you have to mess with to get that sound going. Keep stuff easy. People, remember, like less is more in every situation aside from money. So less equipment allows for more allocation of quality to less equipment. All of a sudden, okay, have less stuff that's twice the quality. Now you're talking. Now this is efficient and makes sense. So I would just say, really, the whole job here is to be consistent. And if you have a musician that's inconsistent, your job is to train them to be consistent so they understand why they are ruining the thing or preventing it from happening, right? In a really loving and constructive way, because this is about community and teamwork and art and us working together. And that's what I got.
Mickey?
Yeah, Roscoe just mentioned in the chat that he wants to know like what cues to look out for in terms of body language. And for me, like if you're working with a musician, in most situations, like say whether recording in a studio, like a producer would know the musician really, really well. And if you're mixing front of house, then you would be you would have been working with the band or the artist for months. You would have gone to rehearsal for like a month or two before you go out on tour, and you really get to know like if they're having a good day or an off day. You can tell from their body language if they're trying to build up to a specific part in a song, or if they're just going to play it mellow. You learn their mannerisms, if like they start to move around more, or if they just like in the song just for some reason just stand at their mic instead of being more active. You get to learn these things, and you know what to expect in terms of your fader moves and how big a move or how small a move you may want to do. And going back to writing the faders, yeah, you definitely do that in a live situation, because what people are hearing are directly influenced by what you're doing. But when you're tracking, when you're cutting a song, you're not writing faders. You leave that to the mix engineer. If you're just tracking, then leave the mixing to the mixer.
And then I know we're running a little long today, but I did want to take a moment to mention a question that had come in from Lois Richter. She said last night on the special show, Marty Atius explained how sound works in a way that was easy to understand. Thank you. Has Marty done any training videos? Where might we find them? If not, please do. Marty, did you have anywhere where people can find out more about your stuff?
I have, I do training and I do teaching about sound and sound production and acoustics. I do that in a lot of house of worship environments. I've done that online as well. I haven't, outside of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum that I produced and hosted during the pandemic, I haven't really done any recorded videos, trainings, but there are a lot of them out there from some very good people, including Michael Curtis and Robert Scoville and Bob McCarthy, who we've had on the show, are all good resources. But thank you very much for the compliments on last night's show. It was a lot of fun to do. And I can quickly address one other question that we actually pushed back and just give a quick look at what we did last.
We had probably 6 or 7. Can folks reach out to you on Discord if they wanna dig in a little bit more?
Absolutely, yes. You can find me on Discord very easily. You can find on the website that we posted, ATScommsFPA.site is the website for the product.
And then be sure to check out the first office hours special that went on last night. It's up on our channel. You can find out about flat panel speakers. It is some of the most fascinating hours that I've been a part of. A couple thank yous. Thank you to the panel for being here today. Man, I mean, legendarily smart panel that comes in on Wednesdays to talk about audio, and it's such a privilege to get smarter as a result of you coming in here and giving all your life experience. We appreciate it. Thank you to the back end crew. I know we were a little late today, but we had to mark the occasion. If we did end up sending your questions back, they're in your Makana in the notes so that you can submit them next time you're on the show. If you had a QR code question, we'll manage to work that in the next time we can. and we appreciate that. Tlaloc traversal today, we've got 25,000 miles. That's 40,000 kilometers, 199 million bananas for scale. All right, thanks, everyone. See you in After Hours.
Hey, on Audio Day, we ought to do the Tlaloc traversal in 20 hertz wavelengths for scale.
Now we're talking.
And judge our question pace and cycles per second.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me hang out on a Wednesday. This was my first Wednesday. This is fun.
Great job.
It's great. Wednesdays are fun. A lot of expertise and a lot of good questions.
Great to see you guys.
You too.
And Marty, I'm sorry I missed your thing. Everything went well last night. I take it.
So it was so cool.
Oh, Marty, you're muted, but you look like you're saying something awesome.
It was brain bending.
Right. No, it was a lot of fun to do. It went really well, and we got some really great questions.
That's awesome.
Go back and watch it. Yeah,
I absolutely will. I really wanted to, and my day just kind of it all.
Here, take a look.
Avalanched.
Take a look at this. This is the product.
Well, I was looking. I mean, so I was looking at them, and so they do have a legit sub, though. It looks like that is a.
Yeah, we have a dual 12 sub and an 18, a dual 18